My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and at 68 years old, I thought I understood the finality of death. Standing beside my husband Robert's mahogany casket in the crowded funeral home in Savannah, Georgia, surrounded by 40 years of shared memories and mutual friends, I believed that grief would be my greatest challenge. I was wrong. The service had been beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke eloquently about Robert's dedication to civil rights law, his 40-year career defending the wrongfully accused, and his unwavering commitment to justice. Our daughter-in-law, Jessica, sat beside me in the front row, her perfectly manicured hand occasionally squeezing mine in what I assumed was comfort. She looked appropriately devastated, dressed in elegant black, her auburn hair styled flawlessly despite the circumstances. "He was such a wonderful man," Jessica whispered during the eulogy, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Eleanor." I nodded, grateful for her support. Since our son Michael had died in Afghanistan 3 years ago, Jessica had become like a daughter to me. She'd moved back to Savannah from Atlanta, ostensibly to help care for Robert during his battle with cancer. Her presence had been a blessing during those difficult months. As the service concluded and mourners began filing past to offer condolences, my phone buzzed with a text message. I almost ignored it. Who sends text during a funeral? But something made me glance down at the screen. The message was from Robert's number. My blood turned to ice as I read the words. "Eleanor, I'm still alive. Don't trust Jessica. She's been poisoning me. Get help." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. This had to be some kind of cruel joke or a technical error. Robert was dead. I'd watched him take his last breath just 3 days ago. I'd held his cold hand as Dr. Martinez pronounced the time of death. I'd signed the death certificate myself. "Eleanor, are you all right?" Jessica's voice seemed to come from far away. "You look pale." I looked up at her concerned face, then back down at my phone. The message was still there, impossible but undeniably real. My hands shook as I tried to process what I was seeing. "It's nothing," I managed to whisper, slipping the phone into my purse. "Just overwhelmed." Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly, but her expression remained sympathetic. "Of course, you poor thing. This has been such a difficult day. Why don't I drive you home? You shouldn't be alone tonight." Something in her tone made my skin crawl, though I couldn't understand why. This was Jessica, the woman who had brought Robert soup when he was too weak to eat, who had driven him to countless doctor appointments, who had held my hand through the worst moments of his illness. But that text message, "Actually," I heard myself saying, "I think I need some time alone to process everything." Jessica's mask slipped for just a fraction of a second, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Are you sure? I really think someone should stay with you tonight. Grief can make people confused." The word confused sent a chill down my spine. Robert had used that exact word in our last real conversation, when he'd tried to tell me something about Jessica, but couldn't seem to find the right words. The cancer treatments had affected his memory and speech, and I dismissed his concerns as medication-induced paranoia. "I'll be fine," I insisted, clutching my purse tighter. "Really?" As I walked toward my car, I felt Jessica's eyes boring into my back. Once safely inside with the doors locked, I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. The message was still there, impossible but real. I scrolled through Robert's recent texts, looking for any clue that might explain this technological impossibility. Most were routine: appointments, grocery lists, messages of love and support. But as I looked closer, I noticed something strange. Several texts I didn't remember receiving, all from the past month, all suggesting that I was becoming forgetful, that I was having trouble with daily tasks. Eleanor, you forgot to take your medication again. Please be more careful. R. You asked me the same question 3 times today. Are you feeling all right? R. Dr. Martinez thinks you should consider assisted living. We should talk. R. I had no memory of receiving these messages. I had no memory of forgetting medication or repeating myself. And I certainly had no memory of any conversation with Dr. Martinez about assisted living. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Robert's number. Check the garage. Behind the paint cans. Evidence. Hurry. My heart pounded as I started the car. Either I was losing my mind, or something very sinister was happening. And somehow, impossibly, my dead husband was trying to warn me. As I drove through Savannah's moss-draped streets toward home, I caught a glimpse of Jessica in my rearview mirror, following at a distance in her silver BMW. The funeral was over, but I had a terrible feeling that the real horror was just beginning. My hands shook as I pulled into my driveway, Jessica's BMW disappearing around the corner just as I parked. The old Victorian house that Robert and I had restored together looked different somehow. More sinister in the gathering dusk, its wraparound porch casting long shadows across the front lawn. I sat in the car for several minutes, staring at the garage door and trying to rationalize what was happening. Dead people don't send text messages. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe someone had gained access to Robert's phone, though the funeral director had assured me all his personal effects were secured. Maybe it was some kind of cruel prank, though. Who would be so heartless? But those older text messages bothered me more than the supernatural impossibility of the recent ones. I had always prided myself on my sharp memory, my organizational skills. As a retired librarian, attention to detail had been my specialty. Yet according to these messages, I'd been increasingly forgetful, increasingly dependent on Robert's care. My phone buzzed again. Eleanor, please! The garage. Time is running out. R. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked to the garage side door. The keypad lock that Robert had installed last year blinked green as I entered the code. Hour, anniversary date. Inside, everything appeared normal. Robert's workbench was still covered with the woodworking project he'd abandoned when his hands became too weak to hold tools. Garden equipment hung neatly on wall hooks. Paint cans lined the shelves in organized rows. Behind the paint cans, just as the message had instructed, my fingers found a small metal box I'd never seen before. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. The first was a copy of my medical records from Dr. Martinez's office, but they contained test results and diagnoses I'd never received. According to these papers, I'd been experiencing severe cognitive decline for months. There were notes about memory tests I didn't remember taking, prescriptions for dementia medications I'd never seen, and recommendations for immediate placement in a memory care facility. The second document was even more disturbing. A power of attorney form with my signature, giving Jessica complete control over my finances and medical decisions in the event of my incapacity. I stared at the signature, which looked convincingly like mine but felt foreign somehow. The third document was a will, dated just 2 weeks ago, leaving everything to Jessica in recognition of her devoted care during my husband's illness and my subsequent cognitive decline. I had never signed any of these documents. My phone rang, making me jump. Jessica's name appeared on the caller ID. Eleanor, where are you? I came by to check on you and you're not home. I looked around the garage, my heart pounding. I went for a drive. to clear my head. 20 minutes passed as Jessica patiently explained each document, her voice growing more insistent as she noticed I wasn't drinking the tea. I nodded and made appropriate sounds while secretly recording our conversation on my phone, just as Robert had apparently done. "Eleanor, you've barely touched your tea. Are you feeling all right?" "Just nervous, I suppose. This is so much to take in." Jessica's eyes hardened slightly. "Perhaps we should call Dr. Martinez after all. This level of disorientation combined with your recent memory issues." She reached for her phone, but a knock at the front door interrupted her. We both froze, listening. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Detective Morrison, Savannah Police Department. I need to speak with you about your husband." Jessica's face went completely white. "What could the police want?" "Eleanor, maybe you shouldn't—" "I'll answer it," I said, standing on shaky legs. "It's probably just routine paperwork." Jessica grabbed my arm. "Wait, let me handle this. You're obviously not thinking clearly. The stress, the grief." I pulled away from her grip. "I'm perfectly capable of speaking to a police officer in my own home." Detective Morrison was exactly what I'd hoped for. A middle-aged black man with kind eyes and the bearing of someone who'd seen enough injustice to recognize it quickly. He wore a rumpled brown suit and carried a worn leather briefcase. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm sorry for your loss. I know this is difficult timing, but I received some concerning information about your husband's death." Behind me, Jessica appeared in the hallway. "Officer, I'm Jessica Whitmore, Eleanor's daughter-in-law. This really isn't a good time. Eleanor has been experiencing some cognitive difficulties, and she's very upset about—" "Actually, ma'am, I'd like to speak with Mrs. Whitmore privately, if that's possible." Jessica's mask slipped completely for a moment, revealing something cold and desperate. "I don't think that's wise. Eleanor has been very confused lately. Perhaps I should call her doctor." Detective Morrison studied Jessica with the sharp gaze of someone trained to spot deception. "And you are?" "I'm family. I've been caring for both Robert and Eleanor for months. Eleanor's condition has deteriorated significantly since Robert's death. Mrs. Whitmore," Detective Morrison addressed me directly, "are you comfortable speaking with me alone?" "Yes," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "Jessica, perhaps you could give us some privacy." Jessica's jaw tightened. "Eleanor, I really don't think—" "I'm asking you to leave us alone," I said more firmly. For a moment, Jessica looked like she might argue further. Then she forced her caring mask back into place. "Of course. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." Detective Morrison waited until she was out of earshot, then pulled out a small recording device. "Mrs. Whitmore, I received some very disturbing information about your husband's death and your current situation. Before we discuss it, I need to ask, do you feel safe in this house right now?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. I'm not sure." He nodded grimly. "Your husband contacted me 3 weeks before his death. He believed he and you were being systematically poisoned by someone with access to your home and food. He provided me with audio recordings and other evidence of what he suspected was a complex elder abuse scheme." My legs nearly gave out. "Robert contacted you before he died?" "Yes, ma'am. He was very concerned about your safety. He said that if anything happened to him, I should check on you immediately after the funeral." Detective Morrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, has anyone been encouraging you to sign legal documents? Power of attorney forms, wills, anything like that?" I glanced toward the kitchen where Jessica was probably listening to every word. "Yes, tonight actually." Jessica has papers she says Robert left for me to sign. Don't sign anything. Those documents are likely fraudulent. He pulled out his briefcase and removed several files. We've been investigating a network of individuals who target elderly couples, particularly those with substantial assets. They gain access to the home under the guise of providing care, then slowly poison the victims with drugs that mimic dementia symptoms. My hands shook as the full scope of what had been happening became clear. The text messages. Someone has been sending me messages from Robert's phone, warning me about Jessica, telling me where to find evidence. Detective Morrison frowned. Text messages from your husband's phone? After his death? I know it sounds impossible, but... I pulled out my phone and showed him the messages. His expression grew grave as he read them. Mrs. Whitmore, we recovered Robert's phone from the funeral home. It's been in evidence lockup since yesterday. These messages, they're not coming from his device. A chill ran down my spine. Then who's been helping me? I don't know, but whoever it is has been feeding you accurate information. Everything you found matches what your husband documented before his death. He pulled out a thick folder. We have recordings, photographs, financial records. Your husband was remarkably thorough in documenting what was happening to both of you. From the kitchen came the sound of Jessica talking quietly on the phone. Her voice was tense, urgent. Detective, I think she's calling someone. Maybe running. He nodded. We have units positioned outside. Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to listen carefully. We believe Jessica Chen, that's her real name, not Jessica Whitmore, is part of an organized ring that has victimized at least 12 other couples across Georgia and South Carolina. The total losses exceed $3.2 million. 12 other couples, elderly people with substantial assets, usually recently widowed or dealing with health issues. The perpetrators gain access as caregivers, slowly poison the victims to create the appearance of mental decline, then use fraudulent legal documents to gain control of their assets. I thought about all those months when Jessica had seemed like such a blessing, taking care of Robert and me with such apparent devotion. How many people have died? Detective Morrison's expression darkened. At least 8 confirmed deaths. All appeared to be natural causes until we started looking deeper. A sound from the kitchen made us both turn. Jessica stood in the doorway, no longer bothering with her caring facade. Her face was hard, calculating. Eleanor, she said coldly, you're making a serious mistake. Detective Morrison stood slowly, his hand moving toward his service weapon. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay right where you are. Jessica smiled, but there was nothing warm about it. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Detective. Eleanor is mentally incompetent. She's been hallucinating, receiving messages from her dead husband. No one will believe anything she says. Actually, ma'am, we have enough evidence to arrest you right now. Why don't we start with the vial of scopolamine in your purse? Jessica's eyes flicked toward her purse, then back to Detective Morrison. The mask had fallen away completely, revealing the predator underneath. You can't prove anything, she said, but her voice betrayed her desperation. Detective Morrison smiled grimly. Watch me. Hey everyone, if you're hooked on this incredible story of mystery and justice, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Don't miss the next chapter because this supernatural thriller is about to reveal its biggest secrets. That's exactly what I was worried about. Honey, grief can cause confusion, disorientation. You shouldn't be driving alone. Where are you? I'll come get you. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. The caring daughter-in-law act felt suddenly transparent, like a mask that no longer fit properly. "I'm fine, Jessica. Really. I'll be home soon. Eleanor, we need to talk about some important papers Robert left for you. Legal documents that need your immediate attention. It's about your future care and..." I hung up, my hands shaking. Everything was starting to make horrible sense. Robert's sudden cognitive decline in his final weeks, when he'd seemed confused about simple things but had tried desperately to tell me something about Jessica. The way she'd inserted herself into every aspect of his medical care. The way she'd encouraged me to let her handle the insurance paperwork, the funeral arrangements, everything. My phone buzzed with another text from Robert's number. "She drugged us both. Slow-acting poison. Made us seem sick, confused. Call Detective Morrison. He knows about elder fraud. Trust no one else." I stared at the message, pieces clicking into place like a jigsaw puzzle revealing a nightmare. Robert hadn't been dying of cancer complications. He'd been murdered, and if these documents were any indication, I was next. But how was he sending these messages? And why should I trust them when everything else seemed designed to make me question my own sanity? A sound outside made me freeze. Footsteps on gravel. I peeked through the garage window and saw Jessica's BMW parked at the curb, headlights off. She was walking toward the house, no longer bothering with her concerned daughter-in-law persona. Her posture was predatory, purposeful. Another text. "Basement, behind water heater. More evidence. Call Morrison now." I heard the front door open. Jessica had a key, of course. She'd been living here for months, caring for us both. Or so I thought. "Eleanor!" Her voice called out, echoing through the house. "I know you're here. Your car is in the driveway." I clutched the metal box and crept toward the basement door. If there was more evidence down there, I needed to find it before Jessica found me. But as I reached for the door handle, I heard her footsteps heading toward the garage. "Eleanor, we really need to talk about those papers Robert left, and about your condition." The basement stairs creaked under my feet as I descended into the darkness, praying that whatever Robert had hidden down here would be enough to expose the truth before it was too late. Above me, I heard Jessica enter the garage, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. She was looking for something, or someone. Time was running out, and I still didn't know if I was losing my mind or fighting for my life. The basement smelled of dust and old memories as I fumbled for the light switch, my phone's flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. Behind the water heater, exactly where the mysterious text had indicated, I found another hidden compartment, this one containing a small digital recorder and several flash drives. My hands trembled as I pressed play. On the recorder, Robert's voice, weak but unmistakably his, filled the basement. "Eleanor, if you're hearing this, then my suspicions were correct and Jessica has done something to me. I've been recording our conversations for weeks, documenting what she's been doing to us both." Above me, I could hear Jessica moving through the house, calling my name with increasing irritation. Robert's voice continued. "She's been drugging our food with something that mimics dementia symptoms. Small doses of anticholinergics, drugs, probably scopolamine or something similar. It causes confusion, memory loss, makes us appear to be losing our minds. She's been documenting our decline to support her legal claims." I leaned against the wall, the full horror of our situation becoming clear. Jessica hadn't been caring for us. She'd been slowly poisoning us, creating evidence of our supposed mental incapacity to justify taking control of our assets. The flash drives contain copies of her communications with someone named David Chen, who appears to be helping her with the fraud. They've done this before, Eleanor. 2 other elderly couples. We're not the first. A chill ran down my spine as Robert's voice grew weaker, but more urgent. I've contacted Detective Morrison at the Savannah Police Department. He specializes in elder abuse cases. If something happens to me, give him these recordings. Don't trust anyone else. Jessica has connections in the medical community. People who are either complicit or being manipulated. The basement door creaked, open above me. Eleanor, are you down there? Please, honey, you're starting to worry me. This kind of disorientation is exactly what Dr. Martinez was concerned about. I quickly pocketed the recorder and flash drives, then grabbed an old shoebox to make it look like I'd been searching for something innocent. I'm here, I called up, trying to keep my voice steady. Just looking for some old photos Robert mentioned. Jessica appeared at the top of the stairs, her silhouette backlit by the kitchen light. What photos, dear? You seem confused again. Maybe we should call Dr. Martinez. As I climbed the stairs, I studied her face in the dim light. The mask of concern was still there, but I could see something predatory underneath. The look of someone who viewed me as an obstacle to be eliminated, rather than a person deserving of care. I'm fine, Jessica. Just nostalgic, I suppose. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Of course you are. Grief affects everyone differently. But Eleanor, we really do need to discuss those papers Robert left. There are some decisions that can't wait. She led me to the kitchen table where she'd laid out a stack of documents. I recognized them as more sophisticated versions of what I'd found in the garage. Power of attorney forms, medical directives, even what appeared to be a commitment order for immediate psychiatric evaluation. Robert was very concerned about your mental state in his final weeks, Jessica said, her tone sickeningly sweet. He wanted to make sure you'd be properly cared for. These papers just formalize those arrangements. I stared at the documents, my mind racing. I need to read through these carefully. This is a lot to process. Of course, but honestly, Eleanor, some of this is quite urgent. The power of attorney, for instance, needs to be filed immediately to ensure your bills get paid and your medical needs are met. You've been forgetting so many things lately. She pulled out a pen and placed it in front of me. We can go through everything together. I'll explain each section. My phone, still in my purse, buzzed with another text. I glanced down discreetly. She's going to give you something to make you compliant. Don't eat or drink anything. Play along, but don't sign. Morrison is on his way. How was this possible? How was Robert communicating with me from beyond the grave? But the specificity of his warnings, the accuracy of what I was finding, made it impossible to dismiss as coincidence or delusion. You know what, Jessica? I think I need some tea first. This is all so overwhelming. Perfect idea. I'll make some of that chamomile blend you love. She moved to the stove with practiced efficiency, and I watched as she discreetly added something to the teapot from a small vial in her pocket. The same caring gesture she'd made countless times over the past months, each time probably adding to Robert's and my cognitive decline. Jessica, I said carefully, before we start on the paperwork, can I ask you something? Of course, honey. How exactly did Robert discuss these arrangements with you? In his final weeks, he could barely speak coherently. Her hand paused for just a moment on the teapot handle. Oh, we had several conversations over the past months, when you were napping or running errands. He was very clear about his concerns for your welfare. The lie came so smoothly, so convincingly. I wondered how many other families she'd manipulated with the same caring facade. The teapot whistled, and Jessica poured 2 cups with a smile. "Here we go. This should help settle your nerves." She placed the steaming cup in front of me, and I wrapped my hands around it as if grateful for the warmth. But Robert's warning echoed in my mind. "Don't eat or drink anything." "Thank you," I said, bringing the cup to my lips but not actually drinking. "You've been so kind through all of this," Jessica beamed. "It's what family does for each other. Now, shall we start with the power of attorney?" As she launched into her explanation of the documents, I pretended to sip the tea while watching for any sign that help was coming. Detective Morrison, if he was real, if Robert had actually contacted him, if any of this impossible situation could somehow lead to justice. Because despite the supernatural impossibility of communicating with my dead husband, one thing was becoming crystal clear. Jessica wasn't just a gold digger. She was a predator, and I was about to become her next victim. The standoff in my living room lasted only seconds before Jessica bolted. She sprinted toward the back door, but Detective Morrison had anticipated this. Within moments, 2 uniformed officers appeared, blocking her escape route. She was handcuffed and read her rights while hurling accusations about my supposed mental incompetence. "This is ridiculous!" she screamed as they led her away. "Eleanor is delusional. She thinks her dead husband is sending her text messages. No jury will believe a crazy old woman." As the police car disappeared down the street, Detective Morrison turned to me with a grim expression. "Mrs. Whitmore, we need to get you to a hospital for blood work. If she's been poisoning you with anticholinergic drugs, we need to document it while it's still in your system." 3 hours later, sitting in the emergency room at Memorial Health University Medical Center, I watched Dr. Sarah Kim review my test results with Detective Morrison. The fluorescent lights felt harsh after the darkness of the past months, but for the first time in weeks, my mind felt clear. "The blood work confirms it," Dr. Kim said. "Elevated levels of scopolamine, consistent with regular small doses over an extended period. The symptoms Mrs. Whitmore has been experiencing, confusion, memory loss, disorientation, are all consistent with anticholinergic toxicity." Detective Morrison nodded. "How long before the effects wear off completely?" "It depends on the duration and dosage of exposure, but with proper supportive care, most patients see significant improvement within 72 hours. As we spoke, my phone buzzed with another text from Robert's number. "Proud of you, Eleanor. But this isn't over. Check Jessica's real name, Jessica Chen. Look into David Chen, Marcus Webb, Linda Santos. The network is bigger than you think." I showed the message to Detective Morrison, who frowned deeply. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need to ask you directly. Do you have any idea who might be sending these messages?" "None whatsoever. But whoever it is has been helping me survive." Detective Morrison studied the phone number more carefully. "This isn't your husband's original number. Someone has spoofed it to make the messages appear to come from his phone." He paused. "We need to trace these messages, but first let's focus on what we can prove." Back at the police station, Detective Morrison led me to a conference room where several other detectives and FBI agents were waiting. The scope of the investigation was far larger than I'd imagined. Agent Patricia Rodriguez from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division spread files across the table. "Mrs. Whitmore, your case broke open what we believe is one of the largest elder abuse networks in the Southeast. Jessica Chen is part of an organized group that has been operating for at least 5 years." She showed me photographs of other victims. Elderly, couples from Atlanta, Charleston, Jacksonville, each with similar stories of trusted caregivers who had slowly poisoned them while stealing their assets. "The pattern is always the same. Agent Rodriguez continued. They target couples with substantial assets, usually after one spouse has received a terminal diagnosis. Someone in the network poses as a caregiver, gains access to the home, then systematically drugs both spouses with substances that mimic dementia symptoms. Detective Morrison pulled out another file. The names in your mysterious text messages all check out. David Chen is Jessica's brother, a nurse practitioner who provided fraudulent medical records. Marcus Webb is a lawyer who prepared false legal documents. Linda Santos worked at a funeral home, helping to cover up suspicious deaths. How many people are involved? Agent Rodriguez grimaced. We've identified 17 individuals across 4 states. Doctors, nurses, lawyers, funeral directors, even staff at assisted living facilities. It's a sophisticated operation that preys on society's most vulnerable citizens. I thought about Robert's final weeks, how Jessica had seemed so caring, so devoted. She lived in our house for months. She cooked for us, drove us to appointments, handled our paperwork. We trusted her completely. That's exactly what makes this type of fraud so insidious, Agent Rodriguez said. The perpetrators exploit the natural trust between caregivers and patients. They present themselves as angels of mercy while systematically destroying lives. My phone buzzed again. Eleanor, ask them about the Meridian Group. That's the name of the organization. They keep files on all their victims. Jessica's laptop has everything. I shared the message with the agents, who exchanged significant looks. We haven't found any reference to a Meridian Group yet, Detective Morrison said slowly. But we did seize Jessica's laptop. If someone is feeding you inside information... Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Mrs. Whitmore, is there anyone who might have access to information about this case? Someone who could be helping you from the inside? I honestly don't know. The messages started at Robert's funeral, and they've been consistently accurate. Whoever is sending them seems to know things before you discover them officially. Over the next several hours, the investigation team walked me through everything they'd uncovered. The Meridian Group, as my mysterious informant had indicated, was indeed the name of the criminal organization. They operated like a franchise, with different cells handling different aspects of the fraud: medical, legal, financial, and disposal of evidence. Your husband's documentation was crucial, Detective Morrison explained. He suspected what was happening and started recording everything. His files gave us the foundation we needed to build cases against the entire network. As evening approached, Agent Rodriguez made an announcement that stunned everyone in the room. We've arrested 14 individuals today in coordinated raids across 4 states. The total recovery is estimated at over $4.2 million, which will be returned to victims and their families. What about the people who died? The 8 victims you mentioned? Agent Rodriguez's expression grew somber. We're working with local coroners to exhume remains for toxicology testing. If we can prove murder, these aren't just fraud charges anymore. They become capital cases. Detective Morrison drove me home as the sun set over Savannah, the Spanish moss in the oak trees, casting familiar shadows. But everything felt different now. The house that had been a trap was becoming a home again. Mrs. Whitmore, he said as we pulled into my driveway, you saved a lot of lives by fighting back. If you hadn't questioned those text messages, if you hadn't looked for evidence, this network might have continued operating indefinitely. As I walked up to my front porch, my phone buzzed one more time. Justice served, but stay vigilant. Evil finds new forms. Robert would be proud. You're stronger than you ever knew. I looked at the message, then at the empty house that Robert and I had filled with 40 years of love and memories. Whoever was helping me from the shadows was right. I was stronger than I'd known. But I still had no idea who my guardian angel was. 2 weeks after Jessica's arrest, I was finally beginning to feel like myself again. The scopolamine had fully cleared from my system, and my mind felt sharp for the first time in months. Detective Morrison had arranged for security cameras to be installed around my house, and I was slowly reclaiming my independence. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Through the peephole, I saw a young man in his 30s with kind eyes and Robert's distinctive chin. My heart stopped. "Mrs. Whitmore? I'm David Whitmore. Robert was my father." I stared at him through the glass, my mind reeling. Robert had never mentioned having a son from a previous relationship. "I know this is a shock," he continued. "I'm a cybersecurity specialist with the FBI. I've been monitoring the Meridian Group's digital communications for 2 years. When my father contacted Detective Morrison, he also reached out to me through encrypted channels. With trembling hands, I opened the door. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same intelligent eyes, the same stubborn jawline, even the same way of tilting his head when concentrating. "Your father, Robert, contacted you before he died?" David nodded solemnly. "He discovered my existence through genealogy research about 6 months ago, when he realized what was happening to both of you. He reached out through secure channels. He knew Jessica would monitor all conventional communications." We sat in the living room where Jessica had tried to manipulate me into signing fraudulent documents just 2 weeks earlier. David pulled out a laptop and showed me encrypted message logs. "Dad was brilliant," he said with obvious admiration. He documented everything and created a dead man's switch, automated messages that would be sent if he didn't check in regularly. That's how I was able to communicate with you after his death. The mystery of the impossible text messages finally made sense. "You've been helping me all along," following Dad's instructions. He predicted Jessica's every move, documented where she would hide evidence, even anticipated her psychological manipulation tactics. David's voice grew thick with emotion. "He saved your life, Mrs. Whitmore. And in doing so, you helped us expose the largest elder abuse network in U.S. history." Over the next hour, David explained the full scope of the investigation. The Meridian Group had been operating for 7 years, with cells in 12 states. They had systematically murdered at least 23 elderly victims while stealing over $8 million. "Jessica Chen was one of their top operators," he said, "but she got careless with you and Dad. She didn't realize she was targeting the wife of a civil rights attorney and the stepmother of a federal cybersecurity specialist." I smiled through my tears. Robert always said justice finds a way. 3 weeks later, I stood in a federal courtroom in Atlanta as Jessica Chen, and 16 co-conspirators were sentenced. Jessica received life in prison without parole for multiple counts of murder. The others received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. During the victim impact statements, I spoke not just for Robert and myself, but for all the seniors who had been silenced by this predatory network. These criminals didn't just steal money, I told the court. They stole dignity, independence, and trust. They weaponized our vulnerabilities against us. But they underestimated something crucial: the power of love that transcends even death. I looked directly at Jessica as I concluded. My husband, Robert, may have died, but his love for me, his commitment to justice, and his determination to protect others lived on through his son. Evil may be clever, but love is smarter. If this story of love transcending death has moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. Share in the comments what surprised you most about this supernatural mystery. See you next time. 2 months after Jessica's arrest, I stood at the podium of the National Center for Elder Justice Conference in Washington, D.C. David sat in the front row, having become the son Robert and I never had but always needed. "A year ago," I began, looking out at the audience of social workers and law enforcement officers. "I thought my story was ending. I was a widow losing her memory, being slowly poisoned by someone I trusted completely. Today I stand as a survivor, thanks to my late husband's love and my newfound stepson's courage." I told them about the impossible text messages that saved my life, the evidence Robert had hidden, and the criminal network that preyed on elderly victims. The Meridian Group operated for 7 years because they weaponized ageism itself. They knew our society often dismisses elderly complaints as confusion. But Robert's legacy shows us that love doesn't end with death, and justice doesn't stop when victims can no longer speak. After my speech, people shared their own stories. A social worker from Michigan told me about elder abuse cases she'd uncovered using techniques from our investigation. A police detective from Texas showed evidence of a copycat network they'd dismantled. Most moving was an elderly woman from Oregon who approached with tears. "Mrs. Whitmore, when I saw your story on the news, I found courage to report my caregiver who was stealing from me. She was arrested last month. The Robert Whitmore Protocol was now implemented in hospitals nationwide. A systematic approach to identifying elder abuse. Detective Morrison, now Chief Morrison, had established elder crimes units in 12 cities. Your case changed everything," Agent Rodriguez told me during a visit. "We've recovered over $15 million for victims' families and prevented countless future crimes." As I sat in my garden that evening, tending Robert's roses, my phone buzzed with a text from David sharing a photo of a new elder abuse prevention center opening in Atlanta, named after Robert. I smiled, realizing that while the supernatural messages had stopped, Robert's influence continued through the real work being done in his memory. Love doesn't need technology to transcend death. It lives on in the actions of those who carry it forward. The sun set over Savannah, painting the Spanish moss in golden light, and I felt complete peace. The nightmare was over, but something beautiful had grown from the darkness. If this story of love transcending death has moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. Share in the comments what surprised you most about this supernatural mystery. See you next time. 1 year later, I'm writing these final words in the sunroom where Robert and I used to share morning coffee. The house feels alive again, filled with purpose rather than the oppressive atmosphere that nearly claimed my life. David moved to Savannah, taking a position with the regional FBI field office. Every Sunday, he brings his wife Sarah and their baby daughter, Eleanor, named in my honor. The laughter of a child has restored something vital to these walls. The Robert Whitmore Center for Elder Justice, housed in our old law office downtown, has become a national model. Seniors who suspect abuse can walk in without appointment or fear. The center provides legal aid, medical evaluation, and most importantly, someone who believes their concerns are valid. Dr. Patricia Williams, the center's director, visits monthly with amazing updates. Last month, they exposed 3 elder abuse cases, recovered $200,000 in stolen assets, and provided support to 47 isolated seniors. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said during her last visit, "organizations in Canada, the UK, and Australia want to replicate our model. The legal changes have been equally profound. The Elder Justice Act now includes provisions inspired by Robert's documentation and David's cybersecurity protocols. Healthcare providers receive training to recognize systematic poisoning. And financial institutions must flag suspicious account activity involving seniors. Perhaps most importantly, the cultural conversation around aging has shifted. No longer are confused seniors automatically dismissed as unreliable witnesses to their own lives. Against everyone's advice, I agreed to meet Jessica Chen in federal prison. The woman across from me bore little resemblance to the caring daughter-in-law who had poisoned us. Prison had stripped away all pretense. Why? I asked simply. Money at first, then power. She replied without remorse. The feeling of being smarter than everyone else, manipulating people society considers disposable. You were supposed to be easy targets. But they did listen, I said quietly. Your entire network fell because you underestimated love between husband and wife and people who refuse to be discarded. As I finish this account, I want to leave one final message. If you're a senior experiencing confusion or feeling manipulated, trust your instincts. Ask for help. Your voice matters, and you deserve dignity and respect. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I survived systematic poisoning, exposed a murder network, and found family I never knew I had. Most importantly, I learned we're never too old to be heroes, never too vulnerable to fight back. Robert always said justice finds a way. In our case, it found a way through love that refused to die, through family bonds that transcended blood, and through the truth that every life has value worth defending. The impossible messages stopped long ago, but Robert's real message continues. Love endures, justice matters, and even the most vulnerable can change the world.